I was gone for one school trip, just a week. When I got back, my bedroom was gone, turned into my sister's art studio. She needs the space, my mom shrugged. Don't be selfish, my dad added. I didn't protest, I just handed back my keys and walked out. 3 months later, my parents handed me a letter. They were suing me. Let me tell you what I thought would happen. I dragged my sore, travel-sick self through the front door, dump my bag in the hallway, say something snarky like, home sweet, overpriced suburban home, and then fall face first onto my bed like a dramatic cartoon character. I'd maybe even whimper a little, just for flair. Instead, what happened was, well, not that, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's rewind. I was just coming back from a school trip. It wasn't one of those cushy school-funded excursions. I paid for it myself. Every single dollar saved up for months. Birthday money, tutoring gigs, dog sitting, selling handmade earrings online. Don't judge, they were actually pretty cute. I hustled for that trip like it was the Olympics, and I was proud of that. It was supposed to be fun, and it was, mostly. But travel doesn't like me. I get sick in buses, planes, boats. If it moves and carries people, I will get dizzy and regret being born. So, after 10.5 hours of bumping around in a bus with spotty air conditioning, my spine felt like it had been compacted into a Jenga tower. My head was pounding, my feet were swollen, and the only thought keeping me going was that glorious moment when I could shower and crawl into my bed, my old creaky, but reliably mine, bed. Also, maybe surprise my family with a few souvenirs. Yeah, I know. Kind of embarrassing now. I didn't go overboard or anything. A little hand-carved bookmark for my mom because she always talks about wanting to read more when things calm down. They never do. A goofy keychain for my dad with a joke I knew he'd grown at. And for my sister. Well, she's into art big time. She'd asked me weeks ago if I came across any cool local art tools or materials to grab some for her. And I did. It wasn't easy either. I had to skip part of a group activity, barter with a grumpy street vendor, and lug the thing around in my bag for days, but I found this really unique set of handmade charcoal pencils, each one wrapped in printed local paper. I imagined her face lighting up when she opened it. Maybe she'd hug me. Maybe she'd say thank you for once without a passive-aggressive undertone. I was still holding on to this tiny, stupid hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd notice I tried. Yeah, that didn't last long. I finally get home, half-conscious, dragging my duffel bag behind me like a body in a crime drama. The house is quiet. I step inside. My shoes hit the floor. Something smells different. Like paint, acrylic. There's a faint hum of music coming from the upstairs hallway. My suitcase thuds against the first step. That's when my mom pokes her head out of the kitchen. Oh, you're back, she says, like I went out for milk. No hug, no how was the trip, just that. I nod and try to smile. Yeah, trip was good. Kind of exhausted. Just want a shower and some sleep. She pauses. Oh, about that. Your room's, well, your sister's using it now. For her art. I blink, like literally blinked, thinking maybe my ears were clogged and I misheard. Come again? She needs the space, she says, lifting one shoulder in a shrug like we're discussing cereal brands. I slowly climb the stairs, my heart thudding now, but not from fatigue. And then I see it. The door to my room, well, formerly my room, is wide open, and everything is different. My posters? Gone. My bed? Gone. My bookshelves? Gone. The walls are white now, splashed with color and covered in pinned-up sketches. There's a brand new easel, a ring light, stacks of canvases, and one of those ergonomic chairs she always whined about needing. Hey, careful where you step, my sister calls, not even looking up. The floor is still drying. I just stood there. I didn't even ask if she was joking, because she wasn't. Obviously. I backed away and went downstairs, dazed. My dad was on the couch watching some wildlife documentary like this was any other Tuesday. Hey, kiddo, he said. Don't be selfish, okay? She's trying to build a portfolio. You'll be 18 soon anyway, right? Because nearly 18-year-olds don't need beds or basic human respect. What about my stuff? I asked. It was the only thing I could think to say. My voice came out thin. It's all boxed up in the garage. You can take it whenever. I didn't speak. Not really. I just nodded. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the house keys I'd had since I was 13 and placed them on the kitchen counter. I didn't make a scene. I didn't scream or slam doors. I just left. There was a second, maybe two, of silence, and then I heard my mom behind me. "Where are you going? You're not even 18 yet." "Don't be dramatic," my dad added, barely turning his head. It wasn't drama, it was clarity. It's funny. You think when your world shifts like that, it'd be loud, explosive. But this felt quiet, like the absence of something that was never really there in the first place. I didn't know where I was going. Maybe I'd call B. She always said I could crash on her couch if things ever got weird at home. Maybe I'd find some public bench and pretend I was starring in an indie movie. I didn't know. I just knew I wasn't going back. People always say things like, "You must have seen it coming," or "Didn't you notice the signs?" As if hindsight magically rewrites history. But the truth is, when you grow up in a family that ignores you just the right way, softly, politely, strategically, you learn how to gaslight yourself before anyone else even has to. It wasn't just about the room. That was just the final straw, the spark that lit the match. But the fire, that started years ago. My sister and I are only 2 years apart. She's older by age, but younger in everything else. Not because she's immature, but because she was allowed to be taken care of, encouraged to be fragile, wrapped in praise and soft attention. I, on the other hand, was labeled the independent one by the time I was 5. At first, it felt like a compliment. "You're so mature," they'd say, "so easy." But that slowly translated into other things, like being forgotten at school pickup, or making my own dentist appointments, or learning how to cook because Mom was too busy helping my sister prep her art submissions, and Dad was always on a call. I think the first time I truly felt the difference, I was maybe 8. We both entered a school art contest. Mine was a weird, messy collage made of cut-up wrappers and old comic strips. Chaotic, but kind of cool. I didn't win anything, but my teacher said it was imaginative. I was excited to show it off. My sister painted a tree. Just a tree, with watercolor leaves and a little bird. It was nice. She won second place. My parents brought balloons, took her out to dinner, told everyone at church. When I showed them my collage, my mom frowned. "That's a lot going on. But hey, you tried." I pinned it to my bedroom wall anyway. That was the first of many. When my sister wanted to take art classes, she got them. Expensive ones. When I asked to join a writing workshop, "It's across town, sweetie. Hard to get you there with our schedules." When she broke the toaster, it was an accident. When I cracked a dish, it was carelessness. When she forgot her lunch, Dad dropped everything to bring it to her school. When I forgot mine, "You're old enough to pack your own." And birthdays? Don't even get me started. Hers were Pinterest-worthy. Custom cakes, themes, friends from every corner of her life. Mine usually involved a last-minute cake from the grocery store and my aunt texting, "Oops, I thought it was next week." So I clung to the good moments, the crumbs. My dad complimenting my grades with a distracted smart girl before going back to his emails. My mom buying me a book once because she figured I'd like something quiet. They weren't monsters, just inattentive, selectively loving. The kind of people who say "I love you" with their words, but not their choices. As I got older, I stopped asking for things, stopped showing them my wins. It didn't matter. They always belonged to someone else. To her. By the time I was 16, I had fully morphed into the family's background character. I paid for my own phone plan. I applied to jobs and took shifts after school. I figured out my own schedule, my own finances, my own everything. I cleaned quietly, ate quietly, lived quietly, and they praised me for it. "She never gives us trouble. She's so low maintenance." What they meant was, "She doesn't need us, so we don't need to try." My sister, though, she could cry over a broken pen and get a replacement set in 2 days. I once ran a fever and passed out in the bathroom. Woke up an hour later to an empty house. My mom had gone grocery shopping. My dad was at work. My sister was at her art club. No one noticed I was missing. I didn't tell them, because I'd learned by then, there's no point making noise when no one's listening. That's why the room thing hit the way it did. It wasn't just the space. It wasn't even the bed. It was the final confirmation of what I had already known deep down. I was disposable. They didn't even text me while I was away. Not once. My mom said later that they didn't want to bother me, and my dad joked that they figured I needed a break from them. It's funny how they always wrapped neglect in pretty bows. We were giving you space. Sure, so much space you erased me entirely. I tried to keep it together when I left. I really did. But when I finally stopped walking, somewhere near B's place, I sat down on a curb and just broke. Not in a dramatic movie cry kind of way. It was quieter than that, a slow leak of grief I didn't know I'd been holding. I didn't know where I was going next. I didn't have a plan. My exams were coming up. I had nowhere stable to sleep. My sister had an art studio. I had a duffel bag and a keychain souvenir she'd never get to open. One person did come to mind, my grandmother. I hadn't seen her in a while, not because I didn't want to, but because life got noisy, and visiting her always felt like stepping out of that noise for a bit. She lived in a small, elderly home across town, nothing fancy. My parents called it good enough. I made a mental note to stop by soon, Shazin, not because I expected anything, but because sometimes, when everything else feels like it's falling apart, you just want to see someone who remembers who you were before you got tired. When you're sleeping on someone else's couch, everything feels temporary, even you. Bee's family was kind enough to let me stay a few days, but I could feel it. Her mom's tight smiles, the weird silences when I walked into the kitchen, the little hints like, "Are you sure your parents are okay with this?" As if they cared. I wasn't expecting a 5-star suite. I just wanted to exist without being in the way, to finish school without crashing. Finals were creeping up. I was running out of clean clothes. Every time someone offered me help, borrowed shampoo, leftover dinner, I felt like I was shrinking, like a ghost in someone else's life. I was technically still a high school student, but I didn't feel like one. I felt like something in between, too old to ask for help, too young to disappear without it being a problem. And then there was the silence. Not a single message from my parents. Not one call. Not even a, "Hey, are you alive?" It should have hurt more, but honestly, it didn't shock me. What surprised me was how quiet the hurt was. Like I was finally listening to something I'd been ignoring for years. I started avoiding people who asked questions. I told the school I was staying with extended family, which wasn't a lie. Bee's mom was now extending her patience on a daily basis. I knew I couldn't stay there long. I had 10 days until my birthday. 10 days until I legally counted as an adult. 10 days to figure out what adulthood even meant when you didn't have a home. So I went to see the one person who had always seen me, really seen me, even when no one else bothered to look, my grandmother. She lived in a budget elderly home that smelled like boiled potatoes and old newspapers, but she liked it, or at least pretended to. Her room was tiny, with lace curtains and a crochet blanket that she claimed was older than me. I hadn't planned to tell her much. I thought maybe we'd just sip weak tea, and talk about nothing in particular. But the moment I walked in, she looked at me and said, "Something's happened." She always knew. I tried to joke, said I was doing some soul searching. That didn't land. By the second mug of tea, I cracked. I told her everything. Not the polished version I gave B, the real one. About the art studio, the couch, the boxed-up life, the silence from my parents, how I'd left them souvenirs, and they never even asked if I got home safe. I expected sympathy. I didn't expect what came next. Grandma sat perfectly still for a second. Then she said, "Good." I blinked. "Good? You're out. Good. They don't get to put you back now." I didn't know how to answer that, so she did it for me. She opened her nightstand drawer and pulled out a thick envelope, sealed, rubber-banded, and slightly wrinkled. "It's not money," she said before I could ask. "Not yet, but it's how you'll get where you need to go." I stared. "What is it?" "Bank information, some legal forms, a letter to my attorney. I've been preparing it for a while now." I hesitated. "Grandma, I don't want you to give up anything for me." She cut me off with a wave of her hand. "I'm not giving up. I'm giving too. Big difference." I didn't reach for the envelope, but the weight of it in her hand said enough. It wasn't just help. It was a future she'd carved out quietly, piece by piece, while everyone else forgot she existed. That night, I finally opened the envelope. No cash, just clean, folded documents, a list of savings accounts, a note from her lawyer, and on top, in her handwriting, a short line. "I can't give you a home, but I can give you a way out." The next few days moved fast, faster than I could process. Grandma's lawyer confirmed everything was legal. She couldn't gift me the full amount until I turned 18, but she could help me with what she called preparation funds. I found a studio. Tiny, but mine. Signed a short-term lease, paid up front, slept on the floor for the first 2 nights because I didn't have a mattress yet, but it felt better than any bed I'd ever known. I still visited Grandma every day after school. We filled out documents together, ate takeout, watched bad game shows, and mocked the contestants' answers. She told me stories I'd never heard before, about her first love, about how she used to sing in the church choir, about how she once slapped a man who insulted her cooking. It was peaceful. Too peaceful, looking back. There were signs. A shadow on the horizon, a tightening in my chest every time I checked my phone, a tension I couldn't name. At the time, I thought I was just adjusting, settling, figuring out who I was without a house full of people who acted like I didn't exist. I didn't realize that storm clouds were already gathering, that things were about to change again, and not in the way I'd hoped. Because when people ignore you long enough, they think you stop maturing until you become inconvenient. And apparently, I was about to become very inconvenient. They didn't call. They didn't text. They knocked. It was a Tuesday, early evening. I'd just gotten home from work and taken off my shoes when I heard it. 3 sharp knocks at the door. Not the friendly kind. Not the I brought muffins kind. The kind of knock that already feels like an accusation. When I opened the door, they were both standing there. My mom was dressed like she had somewhere more important to be, makeup too perfect, that weird fake smile she used when she wanted to seem reasonable. My dad was stiff, arms crossed, like I was a problem at a parent-teacher meeting. "We need to talk," she said. No hello. No, how have you been? I didn't invite them in, just stood there in the doorway, waiting. "We know what you've done," my dad said. It was almost impressive how quickly they got to it. No pretense, no attempt at warmth, just straight to the accusations. "She's not well," my mom added, voice trembling, but not from sadness, from calculation. "She's been confused lately. She's not capable of making these kinds of decisions." I stared at her. "You're talking about Grandma?" "You took advantage of her," my dad said. "You manipulated her into giving you access to her finances." I laughed. I didn't mean to. It came out a short, stunned laugh that felt like a cough. "I didn't take anything," I said. "She gave it to me. She planned it months ago." "You expect us to believe that?" my mom snapped. "No," I said. "I don't care what you believe." I started to close the door. That's when he pulled it out. A folded sheet of paper, cream-colored, legal header. "We'll see you in court." They'd filed a report. Elder financial abuse. That was the term they used. They claimed Grandma wasn't mentally sound, that she had been coerced, that I had isolated her from her real family and tricked her into signing over control of her accounts. And just like that, the life I was building started to shake. Not fall, not break, just tremble, the way a house does when a train passes too close. The lawyer Grandma had used contacted me right away. He was furious. He said it was a smear job, laughably transparent. But still, paperwork had to be filed, statements made, medical evaluations submitted. It was real now. It wasn't just family drama. It was court dates, case numbers, and signatures. Grandma, for her part, was livid. She marched into her doctor's office the same day and demanded a full psychological evaluation, passed every test with dry sarcasm and a memory sharper than mine. She gave the elderly home director a copy of the court papers and asked him, very calmly, to testify on her behalf. He agreed without hesitation. She even sent me a message that night. "Let them come. I've been underestimated longer than you've been alive." I was scared, because I knew how good they were at turning things around, how easily they slipped into the role of concerned parents. They'd done it before, at school, at church, even with relatives. They had a tone, a look, a script, and they were used to people believing it. I was just the girl who walked out, the moody one, the difficult child, the one who didn't answer calls or show up for family dinners. They'd paint me as ungrateful, manipulative, out for money. Me? I didn't want money. I just wanted a bed, a place, a life that didn't feel like being punished for existing. The court process didn't last long. Their case was flimsy, rushed, and full of contradictions. Grandma's evaluation shut it down completely. Her doctor testified that she was mentally competent and exceptionally aware. The elderly home staff backed her up. Their lawyer dropped them a week before the scheduled hearing, said they were uncooperative. They tried to backpedal, tried to make it sound like a misunderstanding, that maybe they'd overreacted out of concern, that they just wanted what was best for Mom. But it was too late. Word got out. Extended family started asking questions. One aunt reached out, furious. Apparently, my parents had told everyone that Grandma could barely remember her own name, that she was withering away. No one had bothered to check. Now they were checking, and it wasn't looking good. Grandma updated her legal documents again. This time, she added me as her official medical proxy. If her health ever declined, I'd be the one making the decisions, not her daughter, not her son-in-law. I asked if she was sure. She said yes without blinking. They don't get to decide how I leave this world, she said. They already decided how little I mattered in it. A month passed. I focused on school, on work, on sleep, on remembering how to breathe. I got accepted into a university program across the state, full scholarship. It was a dream I never thought I'd have the right to chase. When I told Grandma, I expected her to hesitate, to ask me not to go, to say she needed me close. She didn't. She just smiled and said, "Time to move." I promised to visit every weekend. She rolled her eyes. "You'd better." We found her a new care home closer to campus, safer, warmer. They had a garden, a therapy dog, live music on Wednesdays. I paid the difference in cost, gladly. It felt like building something real, something mine. Years passed. I graduated, got a job I actually liked, rented a better apartment, paid taxes, made grown-up phone calls, and every Sunday I visited Grandma. Her money eventually ran out, but mine didn't. I took over the costs without blinking. It wasn't a burden, it was an honor. She lived longer than anyone expected, laughed louder than anyone her age had a right to, told inappropriate jokes to nurses, gave me pep talks before interviews. She lived, and when she finally passed, it was quiet, peaceful, in her sleep. I held her hand until the very end. She left a note, just one line. "You gave me a second life. I hope I gave you yours." I didn't invite my parents to the funeral, or my sister. I heard they're still together, that my sister's art career fizzled, that she now manages a craft store downtown. They don't speak to most of the extended family anymore. Sometimes I wonder if they ever think about me, about Grandma, about what they tried to take. But then I remind myself, it doesn't matter. They had their chance to know me, to know her. They chose control over connection, image over truth. And we chose each other. That was my story. Looking back, I don't know what shocks me more, how far they went, or how long it took me to stop expecting them to care. But in the end, I found something better than their approval. I found peace. And I found someone who believed in me when no one else did. So now I want to know, what do you think? Were they ever going to treat me differently? Did I do the right thing by walking away? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, personal, emotional, and a little messy, hit subscribe.